Your Honor, what room is this?
This is courtroom 2.
Thank you.
All right, it looks like we are live streaming now. So we had been addressing a couple of preliminary matters. The point I had made is that if there are connectivity issues or we have trouble hearing or seeing anyone, I will interrupt as needed. Please do the same for me if you're having trouble seeing or hearing me. It looks like I forgot to turn my, there we go, we got it. Okay. So please do the same for me if you're having trouble seeing or hearing me as well. Outside of that, if there are any discrepancies between the timekeepers, I'll resolve that fairly. We've run into that in a couple of other rounds. I know it's really difficult when we're all not in a room together to keep track of the time in particular. So we'll work through those issues as we come to them. So Ms. Snyder, do you have any other preliminary issues you'd like to address?
Yes, Your Honor. Under competition rule 7.4, may we screen share documents and exhibits before they have been admitted, with the understanding that the jury will not see them until they are admitted?
That would be perfectly fine.
Also, under competition rules 7.4 and 4.7, a team may use Zoom annotation features to mark exhibits electronically. Once an exhibit is admitted, would the court like us to ask for permission to mark the exhibit?
That's also perfectly acceptable.
We ask for any remaining time left in the case to be saved for a rebuttal.
Also fine.
And lastly, would you prefer for opposing counsel to have their cameras on for the other side's opening and closing statements?
Why don't we leave those off just to save bandwidth for everybody? So only the people who are speaking have your cameras on. Maybe that'll help with some of the issues we ran into during the competition yesterday.
Thank you, Your Honor. No other preliminary matters for the prosecution.
Okay, Team 7, are there any preliminary matters that you would like to address?
Your Honor, we request permission for team timekeepers to post time in the public chat.
Perfectly fine. Please do.
And I think that's all of the preliminary matters.
All right, let's go ahead and move to the introductions. So Team 9, would you like to introduce yourselves, please?
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Audra Snyder, and today I will be delivering the opening statement on behalf of the prosecution, conducting the cross-examination of Taylor Perkins, and conducting the direct examination of Kyle Cusack.
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Bella Burgess, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Alex Fuentes, as well as the cross-examination of Blake Van Owen.
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Henry Falconetti, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Detective Jordan Markowitz, the cross-examination of Avery Becker, as well as delivering closing statements on behalf of the prosecution. At this time, may our witnesses introduce themselves?
Please.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Spencer Wilcox, and today I am Alex Fuentes.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Freya Naj, and today I am Kyle Cusack.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Daniel Nakayama, and today I am Detective Jordan Markowitz.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Anna Sherman, and today I will be the timekeeper for the prosecution.
All right, thank you, Team 9. Team 7, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Taylor Gleim. I will be giving the opening statement, directing Blake Van Owen, and crossing Kyle Cusack.
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. I am Emma Espino, and I will be cross-examining Alex Fuentes and directing Amy Becker.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Zifan Huang. I will be directing Taylor Perkins and crossing Jordan Markowitz, and I'll also be delivering a closing statement. May we now introduce our witnesses?
Please do.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. I'm Cyan Oakleaf, and today I'll be portraying Blake Van Owen.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Juliet Buckley, and today I'm portraying Avery Becker.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the opposing counsel and the jury. My name is James Steele, and I will be representing Taylor Perkins.
Good morning, Your Honor. I'm Sailor Rule, and I am the defense timekeeper.
Okay, thank you, Team 7. What we've done in the last couple of rounds that I think has worked particularly well for our scores is for me to verify everybody's name at the close of the particular witness who's testifying. So I'm going to make an effort to do that today. But it looks like we have everyone present. Everyone is ready to get started. So let's move to opening statements. Is the prosecution in this case prepared to give an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you can start when you're ready.
Can you see and hear me all right?
I can hear you just fine. I can't see you, but I think we're having a bit of a delay in the screen switching back and forth to the person who is actually speaking. So go ahead and get started. I think it'll go ahead and resolve itself.
Please interrupt me if the connection breaks.
I will.
The right place at the right time. Avery Becker was naturally very good at mock trial. So good, she won awards at state, a high honor in the mock trial world. However, Miss Becker was often at odds with her mock trial coach, Mackenzie Brackman. Coach Brackman repeatedly and publicly criticized Miss Becker. Miss Becker told her mother that she would get back at Brackman if it was the last thing she ever did. The right place at the right time. You will hear today about text messages that Miss Becker sent to a fellow student regarding her plans to break in and vandalize Mr. Brackman's house. But when she got there, she was surprised by Mr. Brackman, and the two started to struggle over a knife. Finally, Miss Becker got control over the knife and stabbed Mr. Brackman to death. The right place at the right time. Today, Avery Becker is being charged.
Ms. Snyder, we just lost you on audio. And I think we've lost you on video as well. Could the timekeepers go ahead and pause the clock for a second?
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, can you hear me now?
I can hear you fine. Why don't you go ahead and turn your video off? I hate to do that
Yes.
to you, but I think that's part of the problem.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you can start when you're ready, and timekeepers, you can restart as well.
May I start from where I left off, or would you like me to restart?
Start from where you think you left off.
Yes. Today, Avery Becker is being charged with murder in the first degree and burglary in the second degree. The prosecution has the burden of proof to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, Avery Becker, knowingly and unlawfully entered the home of Mackenzie Brackman with the intent to burglarize and vandalize, and that Mr. Brackman died during the course of this burglary. You will hear from 3 witnesses. First, you will hear from Alex Cifuentes, a fellow mock trial student with the defendant. He will testify about the rocky relationship between the defendant and Coach Brackman. He will also testify about text messages that the defendant sent to his phone regarding her plans to break in and vandalize Mr. Brackman's home. Next, you will hear from Kyle Kuzak, a crime scene reconstruction investigator. She will testify about the physical evidence found at the crime scene and how this was a planned burglary gone wrong. Finally, you will hear from Detective Jordan Markowitz, an expert in cell phone data analysis. He will testify that the police obtained valuable data from the defendant's phone, placing her at the scene of the crime around the time of Mr. Brackman's death. He will also testify that the defendant's phone connected 3 times to the cell tower nearest to Mr. Brackman's house. Members of the jury, 1 time is a coincidence, 2 times is a coincidence, but 3 times, there's no coincidence there. Today, you will hear from 3 witnesses testifying about the rocky relationship between the defendant and Mr. Brackman, testifying that this was a burglary gone wrong, testifying that the defendant was in the right place at the right time. At the end of this trial, my co-counsel, Mr. Falconetti, will stand before you and ask for a verdict of guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Would the defense like to give an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you can start when you're ready.
Ladies and gentlemen, opposing counsel, members of the jury, and Your Honor, today we are going to hear an elaborate story about 2 experts who did poor police work identifying the wrong suspect and gave an efficient assembly of evidence against Avery Becker, whose only fault was vandalizing her coach's car, a lapse of judgment that she continually apologized for, most definitely not a person capable of murder. The prosecution will present 3 witnesses, a high school rival of Avery Becker, 1 who had no knowledge of the crime, 2 wasn't there for the crime, and 3 wasn't a friend of Avery's. They were simply jealous of Avery Becker. Both police experts with technological tools that the government has provided them and the years of experience and knowledge in the field failed to do their jobs and skipped multiple important steps in their investigation. We will bring you Avery Becker, an honors student and award-winning mock trial competitor. After she realized that the marker she used to deface her coach's car was permanent instead of a temporary marker, outburst towards her coach, who cried after she went home. And she was with her friend Taylor Perkins all day during the day of the murder. Taylor Perkins not only knows the character of his best friend, he verified that he was with her all day. Indeed, he presented an alibi. Maybe you don't fully believe the words of teenagers, so what about the affirmation of crime scene reconstruction and police investigative tactics expert Blake Van Owens? Owen will conclude, police identified as the murder weapon a knife that didn't match the location where the prosecution said it came from, and it was a weapon that could not possibly have been used successfully by someone Avery Becker's size. Police failed to do cell phone tower investigative tools that they had and instead relied on screenshots which are easily manipulated. And critically, the police ignored the obvious connections between Blair Robbins and the murder victim. Robbins, as you learned, had significant motive to kill Coach Brackman and the man who sent his father to prison. At the end of the day, this is a teenager, Avery Becker, who can't handle the guilt of vandalizing Coach Brackman's car, simply isn't capable of murder. Today, you will need to decide, is Avery Becker really capable of murder? We are here to prove that Avery Becker, without a doubt, is not guilty of murder of the first degree and second degree burglary of a dwelling. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gleim. Is the prosecution prepared to call the first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Alex Cifuentes to the stand.
All right, let me verify that we have both a witness and a defense attorney. We have our witness present.
Yes, Your Honor.
And how about the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you can go ahead and start.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Alex Fuentes. I'm a senior at Colorado High School, but back when Coach was killed, I was just a junior.
And do you know the defendant in today's case?
Yeah, Avery Becker. We've always been really good friends. Back in freshman year, when I really didn't know anybody at the school, Avery reached out to me. They're the one that got me to join mock trial with them, and we've been good friends ever since.
And how was your mock trial experience with Becker?
And our entire team was skilled, and that included Avery. She was great at just making stuff up on the fly and just getting people to believe her.
And did anything ever strange happen during mock trial?
Yeah, her and Coach Brackman would just go at it all the time.
What happened?
This one time really sticks out in my mind. It was the practice after the regional tournament back in March. Let's just say Coach Brackman wasn't that happy with Avery's performance.
How so?
He told him, stop just coasting along on your good looks and focus on good lawyering.
And did Becker do anything in response?
She lost it. They went ballistic.
What did they do?
They took this permanent marker from the classroom, went outside and wrote worst attorney award all over Coach's car.
And is there any way that Becker could have mistaken the permanent marker with a dry erase one?
Come on. They don't even look alike.
And how did Mr. Brackman respond?
Well, in my opinion, he reacted like any sensible person would and kicked her right off the team. You don't just mess with someone's ride like that. In my opinion, he should have pressed charges.
Did you have any contact with Becker after the incident?
Yeah, afterwards, she sent me these crazy texts.
And did you show these texts to the jury? To the police?
Yeah, I showed him when Detective Markowitz called me down.
And why didn't you give them your phone?
Well, I didn't give them the physical phone because it was old and it really wouldn't keep a charge. But honestly, I was just so overwhelmed by everything. I completely forgot it. So I sent screenshots instead.
Is Exhibit 14 a fair and accurate representation of the text messages you received?
Yes, it is.
At this time, would my co-counsel please start screen sharing? Are these a fair and accurate representation of the text messages?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution moves to enter the received text messages into evidence.
Is there any objection to this exhibit being admitted?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, Exhibit 14 is admitted.
Could you please read the gray text messages to the jury?
Yeah, Avery goes, well, if he's still upset about his car, then he's going to be really upset when he sees what I do to his house. She then went on to say, I'm going to wait until he's at work, then break in and trash it.
Thank you. No further questions.
Is there any cross-exam?
Yes, Your Honor. I would like to start with, were you and Avery good friends?
Yeah, we've been friends all throughout high school.
Gotcha. And may I ask a little bit about your mock trial performance?
Go ahead.
Did you ever win as many awards as Avery?
No, I didn't.
And did her getting kicked off the team ever excite you in any way? Because maybe you'd be getting a bigger role in a matter?
Though I did get a bigger role with her not on the team, it didn't excite me that much.
With a yes, answering in yes or no, do you enjoy your new role?
I mean, I enjoy mock trial, yes.
That did not answer my question. Do you enjoy your bigger role now that you know?
Yes.
Gotcha. And let's move on a little bit onto the phone. So you never actually sent in the real screenshots, yes or no?
I sent the screenshots, yes.
Did they ever see them physically?
Detective Markowitz saw the screenshots.
Gotcha. Did any detective reach out to you afterwards?
I'm sorry? Could you be more specific?
After the murder, that is.
Yes, I was reached out to by Detective Markowitz.
Gotcha. And just to clarify, the phone itself, where is that right now?
Like I said earlier, it wouldn't really keep a charge, so I sold it.
Gotcha. So answering in yes or no, the police themselves never saw the physical screenshots.
They did see the physical screenshots, yes.
On your,
I sent them to Detective Markowitz.
But wouldn't that be virtually? So they virtually saw your screenshots.
The screenshots are virtual.
Exactly. But as in the phone itself, did they see the messages on the phone?
Not the physical phone itself, no.
Gotcha. That is all, Your Honor.
Is there any redirect for this witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Cifuentes, how did you react to Avery getting kicked off the team?
I mean, the team was partially relieved, but well, I had to take a bigger role because of it, because of her absence from the team.
And how did you feel about this?
Well, it was a little stressful.
And why didn't you show the police the physical phone?
Like I said, I forgot it when Detective Markowitz called me down to the station, but I showed them the screenshots of it.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Let me just verify all of your names. Prosecution attorney is Bella Burgess. The witness was Spencer Wilcox, and the defense attorney, you said your first name is Emma?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. So Emma Espino, thank you.
Thank you.
You can call the second witness.
Your Honor, would you like us to give you our roster?
If you could put a link to it in the chat, that would be good. Thank you.
At this time, the prosecution calls Kyle Kuzak to stand.
All right, let me make sure we've got both a witness and an attorney for the defense. Is the witness here?
I don't see their camera turned on. Yes.
Okay.
The witness is here.
And
Sorry, having technical difficulties.
do we have an attorney for the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you can start when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. Could you please introduce yourself?
My name is Kyle Kuzak.
And what is your current job?
I'm a crime scene reconstruction investigator.
Where do you work?
I work at the Denver Police Department as a civilian employee.
How long have you worked for the Denver Police Department?
I've spent roughly the last 3 years working at the DPD.
And what do you do for them?
I work as a crime scene reconstruction investigator. I investigate complex crime scenes such as homicides, fatal accidents, domestic violence, burglary.
And do you have any training or certifications in the crime scene reconstruction field?
Yes, I was certified by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation as a CSR or crime scene reconstruction investigator, and I've spent the last 19 years serving in this role.
At this time, the prosecution moves to tender Kyle Kuzak as an expert in crime scene reconstruction.
Is there any objection to that designation?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, I heard no objection, so the witness is admitted as that designated expert.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Kuzak, what is your role in today's case?
My role in today's case is that I investigated the crime scene and served as the crime scene reconstruction investigator.
And at the crime scene, what did the police find?
The police found the victim's body just inside the front door. There were several pools of blood around the body. The police also found a bloody knife near the body.
Objection, speculation. He wasn't at the crime scene.
Is there any response?
Yes, Your Honor. This is not speculation because Kyle Kuzak did in fact visit the crime scene. She also worked closely with the police and was able to compare notes that she saw and what the police found at the crime scene.
Ms. Klein, do you have any further argument you'd like to make?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, I think that testimony is admissible. So the objection is overruled. You can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. When did Mr. Brackman die?
Mr. Brackman died on March 6th of 2020.
And where did the police find the body?
The body was found just inside the front door.
What did you conclude about Mackenzie Brackman's death?
He died of excessive blood loss due to a knife being removed from the wound in his back.
And how were you able to reconstruct the crime scene?
Well, I used various techniques such as a physical evidence tracking sheet, a witness tracking evidence sheet, and various other methodologies.
Earlier, you mentioned the body and the murder weapon. Would you recognize pictures of those if I showed them to you?
Absolutely.
Your Honor, permission to screen share Exhibit 3 and Exhibit 5.
Go ahead.
Co-counsel? Ms. Kuzak, what is this?
This is a picture, a close-up image of the victim's body, specifically the knife wound.
And Exhibit 5.
This is an image of the murder weapon in this case.
At this time, the prosecution moves to admit Exhibits 3 and 5 into evidence.
Is there any objection to either of those exhibits?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, both are admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Co-counsel, you may stop screen sharing. Ms. Kuzak, moving on. Did the Brackman security house have a security system?
Yes, there were several doorbell security cameras or Ring video systems around the house.
And were you able to get any videos from those?
Yes.
Were any of them from March 6th, 2020?
Yes, we were able to get several videos from the front, side, and back cameras.
Would you recognize some of those videos if I played them for you today?
Yes.
Your Honor, permission to play Exhibits 10 and 13.
Go ahead.
Co-counsel, could you please play those for me? And I'm sorry, I misspoke earlier. Exhibits 12 and 13. Ms. Kuzak, what was that video?
That video was a video of the intruder entering the residence to the back door.
Co-counsel, could you play Exhibit 13? Co-counsel, it seems your screen is buffering for us.
There we go.
Okay, it's playing now. Thank you, co-counsel. Zach, what was that video?
That was a video of the perpetrator exiting the house to the front door.
Now, Ms. Kuzak, are these videos fair and accurate copies of what you saw from the security system?
Absolutely.
Have they been tampered with or edited in any way?
No, they have not.
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution moves to admit exhibits 10, 12, and 13 into evidence.
Is there any objection to the admission of either of those exhibits?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, both are admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Kuzak, I would now like to review the main conclusions you drew from this case. First, how did you conclude the perpetrator entered the home?
Well, as seen in Exhibit 12, the perpetrator entered the residence through the back door.
And what did you conclude happened next?
Well, the victim was alerted of the perpetrator's presence through the Ring video doorbell system, and the victim looked for a defensive weapon in the kitchen. And then the perpetrator and the victim saw each other, and they started to struggle over this defensive weapon.
And what happened after the struggle?
Well, towards the end of the struggle, the perpetrator was able to gain control of the knife, and the perpetrator stabbed the victim with it. The perpetrator then fled away from the scene out the front door, as seen in Exhibit 13, and the victim followed the perpetrator, but then he pulled the knife out of his back.
Narrative.
I'm sorry, I heard objection, but the rest was kind of garbled.
Objection. Narrative. The witness is telling a story.
You're still a little bit garbled. I got the objection, but could you try turning your screen off? That might help.
Narrative objection. The witness was telling a story.
All right. Any response, Ms. Snyder?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Kuzak is simply restating the conclusions that she drew after her crime scene investigation and reconstruction, which is her field of expertise and has been tendered.
Okay, I think you need to guide the witness a little bit more, so the objection is sustained.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Kuzak, where did the perpetrator exit the house?
The perpetrator exited through the front door, as seen in Exhibit 13.
And after the victim was stabbed, where did the victim go?
The victim followed the intruder towards the front door.
And what happened after that?
The victim pulled the knife out of the wound in his back and died quickly before hitting the floor due to excessive blood loss.
And overall, Ms. Kuzak, what did you conclude after your crime scene reconstruction and investigation?
My overall conclusion was that this case was a planned burglary gone bad.
Thank you. No further questions.
Is there any cross-exam for this witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
All right. Are you a police officer?
No, I'm not. I'm a civilian employee for the Denver Police Department.
You are an expert, correct?
Yes, I'm an expert in crime scene reconstruction. I've had quite years of experience.
You figured out the chronological order of events that took place by the photos, right?
Yes, that was my job as crime scene reconstruction investigator.
You said yourself in your affidavit that the photos were corrupted. How do you know for sure the order of events?
Well, I was able to draw my conclusions from those photos before the photos became corrupted.
Why do you dismiss Blake Van Owen's conclusion to what happened to the victim?
Well, I am a very established crime scene reconstruction investigator. I have 19 years of experience, and whereas Blake Van Owen does not have much experience in the field, I have several years. I'm certified by the the Colorado Bureau of Investigation.
You reviewed the Van Owen report, right? What did you think?
I did review Van Owen's report, but as I just said, I have several more qualifications than Van Owen. I have 19 years of experience as a CSR, and I have been certified by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation.
But you said yourself that you are of different areas of expertise, correct?
Yes, but as I said, I have so much more experience in this field than Van Owen, and I have so much more qualifications as an expert in this field.
You and Van Owen are in different fields of expertise, so how are you more qualified?
Well, as I just said, in this particular field, I can speak more to the events of this case and to this particular field because of my large qualifications. So.
Your conclusion was a burglary gone wrong. How does this relate to Avery Becker?
And Ms. Klein, we're losing you again. Could you shut your camera off? I'm sorry.
Your conclusion was a burglary gone wrong. So how does this relate to Avery Becker?
I was brought in as a crime scene reconstruction investigator. I was not brought in to find suspects. I was brought in to review the crime scene and reconstruct it.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Kuzak, were you able to draw your conclusions prior to the corruption of the photos?
Yes. Unfortunately, the lab and the police corrupted the photos, but I was able to draw my conclusions before they became corrupted.
And were you able to use all pertinent and present evidence at the crime scene to determine your conclusions today?
Absolutely. I was able to observe, I was able to see the crime scene and observe all the evidence and everything along those lines. I was able to, yes.
And what was your main conclusion after your crime scene reconstruction?
My main conclusion was that this case was a planned burglary gone bad.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Let me just verify everybody's names again. We have Audra Snyder as attorney for the prosecution, Freya Naj as witness, and Taylor Gleim as defense attorney. Okay, I see everybody nodding their heads or not speaking up otherwise, so you can call your third witness.
The prosecution calls Detective Jordan Markowitz to the stand.
Okay, let me make sure we've got both our witness and an attorney for the defense. Is our witness here?
Yes, Your Honor.
And how about the attorney for the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. Right here.
All right, thank you. You can go ahead.
Before I begin, Your Honor, could I request that everyone who isn't competing, yourself excluded, of course, turn their cameras off in the interest of preserving the best connection possible?
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. So if you're not directly participating in the round, if you could shut your cameras off, that might help us all out a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Morning, Counselor. My name is Detective Jordan Markowitz.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a homicide detective for the Denver Police Department.
How are you involved in today's case?
Well, Counselor, I investigated the death of Mackenzie Brackman.
How long have you worked at the Denver Police Department?
I've been at the DPD for the past 13 years, the most recent 7 being as a homicide detective.
Could you tell us what sort of cases you've investigated?
Many cases. When I was a rookie, all the way to small stuff, all the way to, obviously now, homicides.
Objection, what's the relevance of this question?
Any response?
Your Honor, I'm laying foundation to tender this witness as an expert.
Any further argument?
No, Your Honor.
Overruled. I think it's acceptable. You can proceed.
Detective, do you have any specialized training?
Yes, sir, I do. I'm certified in cell phone technology and forensic data recovery. Certification I obtained from the American Academy of Law Enforcement.
Could you tell us what you had to do to become certified?
Of course, sir. I had to enlist in a training course and then pass the certification test.
What sort of experience do you have working with cell phone data?
I have a lot of experience, sir. I've downloaded the contents of hundreds of cell phones at this point. And in terms of cell tower data, I've had to interpret cell tower data in at least 50 cases now.
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution moves to tender Detective Jordan Markowitz as an expert in cell phone data recovery and analysis.
Is there any objection to that designation?
No objections, Your Honor.
The expert is so designated. You can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, did you obtain any cell phone records in this case?
Yes, sir, I did. I obtained the cell phone records for Avery Becker's cell phone.
Why did you obtain Avery Becker's cell phone records?
Well, sir, through the course of my investigation, I had become aware of the fact that Avery Becker and Mackenzie Brackman had known each other.
Objection. Improper character evidence. This witness does not know Avery Becker.
Any response?
Your Honor, I believe we've laid foundation that that the detective has investigated Avery Becker thoroughly and would know about these matters.
Any further argument from the defense?
This witness doesn't know the Avery Becker's character.
Overruled. I think there's enough foundation to allow this in, so you can proceed.
I'll repeat the question, Detective. Why did you obtain Avery Becker's cell phone records?
Well, Counselor, I obtained Ms. Becker's cell phone records because I'd become aware through the course of my investigation that Avery Becker and Mackenzie Brackman had known each other and that the two had had a recent disagreement. Through my investigation, I'd also become aware of text messages.
Objection, speculation. This witness wasn't there for their argument, so how would he know they had an argument?
Any response?
Your Honor, again, this detective has investigated these matters thoroughly, and we've laid foundation for his knowledge of these events.
Any further argument?
No, Your Honor.
Why don't you ask him how he's aware of it? I think that'll give you the adequate foundation there. Go ahead.
Detective, how are you aware of these events?
I was able to obtain text messages, and I'd also done this through interviewing various witnesses.
What did you conclude from these cell phone records, Detective?
I concluded, or analyzing all the records, I concluded that Avery Becker was at Mackenzie Brackman's house during the time of the murder.
Can you describe the cell phone records you obtained?
Yes, sir. I got a court order to obtain the cell tower or cell phone records for the defendant's phone.
Can you tell us exactly what cell tower records are?
Well, technically they're called CDRs or call detail records.
In that case, what do call detail records show?
Sir, call detail records should record the date and time of communication.
What's the relevance of this question?
Any response?
Your Honor, we're establishing foundation to show how the detective knew Avery Becker's whereabouts on the date of the victim's murder.
Is there any further argument? Okay, that's overruled. You can proceed.
I'll repeat the question, Detective. What do call detail records show?
Well, Counselor, call detail records record the date and time of the communication, whether that communication was incoming or outgoing, who was involved in the communication, and the most telling piece is the location of the cell tower with which the phone is communicating with.
Do call detail records show you where a person was at a particular time?
Not exactly, Counselor. However, we can track a suspect or another person's interest movement based upon which cell towers their phone connects to.
With that in mind, Detective, were you able to determine the movements of Avery Becker on the afternoon of March 6, 2020?
Yes, sir, I was.
Please explain.
I was able to track which cell phone towers Ms. Becker's phone.
Objection, a vague question. The question was vague.
Any response?
Your Honor, I believe that it's clear that I was asking how the detective knew the movements of Avery Becker on March 6.
Overruled. I think that's an acceptable question. Go ahead.
I'll repeat the question, Detective. Please explain how you knew Avery Becker's movements on March 6.
Yes, sir. I was able to track which cell towers Ms. Becker's phone connected to and was able to plot these various interactions on a map.
Would you recognize the map you made if I showed it to you?
Yes, sir, I would.
Your Honor, permission to screen share Exhibit 16?
Go ahead.
Detective, can you tell us what this is?
Yes, sir. This is the map I created of the various interactions with Ms. Becker's cell phone with the various cell towers.
Has it been altered or modified in any way?
No, sir, it has not.
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution moves to admit Exhibit 16 into evidence.
Is there any objection to Exhibit 16?
Objection, what's the relevance of this exhibit?
Any response?
Your Honor, this document is extremely relevant as it shows the movements of Avery Becker on March 6, which could help the jury conclude whether or not Avery Becker was present at the victim's house at the time of the murder.
Any further argument from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
I think it's relevant, so it's admitted. Go ahead.
Detective, on the afternoon of March 6, what time was the first communication with the defendant's phone?
Counselor, the first communication was at 12:47 p.m. out of the tower. Actually, as still there.
Detective, could you repeat that? You cut out a bit.
Certainly. Can everyone hear me now?
Yes, Detective.
So the first communication was at 12:47 p.m. out of cell tower 1227-3.
Where does that indicate to you Avery Becker was at that time?
That indicates to me that she was at her own residence during this time.
What was the next communication with Avery Becker's phone?
The next communication occurred at 12:55 p.m. out of cell tower 1191-1.
Where does that indicate to you Avery Becker was at that time?
This indicates to me that Avery Becker was traveling down Rock Creek Parkway in the direction of Mackenzie Brackman's house.
When was the last communication with the defendant's phone?
The last three communications occurred at 1:05, 1:06, and 1:17 p.m. out of cell tower 1197-1 as circled there.
Were either of these calls answered?
The calls were not answered as they were very short in duration.
Where does that indicate to you Avery Becker was in that instance?
Based off of that cell tower alone, it indicates to me that she was at Mackenzie Brackman's house during that time.
With all of this in mind, Detective, in your expert opinion, was Avery Becker at the victim's house at the time of the victim's murder?
Well, Counselor, based upon analyzing all of the evidence in the case, I can conclude that Avery Becker was indeed at Mackenzie Brackman's house at the time of the murder.
Thank you. No further questions.
Is there any cross?
Yes, Your Honor. How long was your cell phone technology and forensic data recovery training?
It took about 3 days, but let me tell you, that was a long 3 days.
What happened to the photographs of the blood splatters?
Well, our forensic team took photos of them. Unfortunately, they became corrupted, but to put everyone's mind at ease, they bear no weight in today's case.
But you recognize the blood splatters as cast-off marks.
Certainly, I've investigated plenty of homicides.
But this crime happened of March of 2020. It's currently 2021. Those photos are corrupted. How can you be sure that those are cast-off marks?
Well, I've been a homicide detective for 7 years. I think I would remember cast-off marks.
Well, you just said it yourself. You've been a homicide detective for 7 years. You've seen many other homicides. Couldn't your memory easily be, like, could you forget it? Could you remember it?
Objection asked and answered.
Any response?
I'm just clarifying with the detective who is an expert if he could have just forgot something.
Any further argument?
Your Honor, the detective has answered this question very clearly.
I think those are fair questions, so you can proceed. Overruled.
Did you know Mr. Brackman before this case?
I've been cross-examined by him on a few occasions.
Did you find how he did his job professional?
I don't know if I necessarily put that in my affidavit. Would you still like me to answer that?
It's fine, we can move on. How did you meet Alex Fuentes?
I obtained a list of the mock trial students from Colorado High School. He was the first name on that list.
And you were suspected of Avery Becker because Alex Fuentes told you.
I did. I had obtained a text conversation from Alex Fuentes.
And that's how you came to the conclusion to be suspected of Avery Becker.
Well, that, and also I was able to track Miss Becker's movements with the various cell towers moving in the direction towards Mackenzie Brackman's house near the time of the murder.
Did Alex Fuentes witness the murder? Was Alex Fuentes at the scene of the crime?
I don't know. He was not. No.
So the cell phone found at Mr. Brackman's house was of Avery Becker's.
The cell phone found at his house was Mr. Brackman's own personal cell phone. I downloaded the contents off that phone.
Where did you find Miss Avery Becker's phone?
Well, Miss Becker claims to have lost the cell phone. I tracked the movements based upon the phone number that her attorney provided me.
Is it possible that when Avery lost her phone that someone else could be carrying her phone?
I don't know if that's necessarily a possibility, counselor.
Were you also aware that Blair Rollins' house is at the same sector as Avery's phone?
That was noted on the map, but I believed any sort of person in relation to Mr. Brackman's defense work was very unlikely.
What do you think Avery Becker's motive is?
Who knows?
In your expert opinion.
I believe that, I don't know where it is. I don't know if it necessarily put that in my affidavit, counselor.
Or let's move on. So you got the lead of Avery Becker from Alex Fuentes, correct?
Alex Fuentes' text messages, which he sent me, in addition to tracking Miss Becker's phone movements, as I've previously noted.
That is all, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Detective Did the corruption of the photos affect your investigation in any way?
They bear no weight in today's investigation, so no.
And was the evidence that you found enough for you to draw your conclusions?
Certainly, Counselor.
Did you consider alternate suspects?
I did, but as I stated on cross-examination, I considered the possibility of someone from Mr. Brackman's defense work being involved in the murder highly unlikely.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I hit the wrong button to unmute. Thank you, everyone. Let me just verify everybody's name. We've got Henry Falconetti as attorney for the prosecution, Daniel Nakayama as witness, and Zithan Huang as attorney for the defense, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you all. I believe that's all of the witnesses for the prosecution.
Yes, the prosecution rests, Your Honor.
All right, is the defense prepared to call their first witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let me make sure we have a witness and an attorney for the prosecution. Do we have our witness? Do we have a witness for the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, great. There we go. And do we have an attorney for the, an attorney for the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Gleim, I may need you to shut your camera off again. On my screen here, your connection is showing up red. So why don't you go ahead and do that now? I'm sorry to have to do that, but I think it's going to be necessary to get through this.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Can you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Of course. My name is Blake Van Owen, spelled BLAKE VANOWEN.
What is your profession?
I am a private investigator, a professor, and an expert witness in police practices. I was previously an officer working for the Aurora Police Department.
Can you elaborate on your experience with the Aurora Police Department?
I quit the department after an unfortunate incident in which I had injured a young woman of color during an arrest. Officially, I was cleared of all wrongdoing because the technique I'd used had been fully approved. But unofficially, I've never cleared myself for my conduct on that evening. Nothing crystallizes a sense that things need to change more than the sense that I wish I knew then what I do now. I was disillusioned by police work, and in the interest of atoning for my actions, I quit.
Why are you participating in this case?
Today I'm here to denounce the prosecution's handling of this case as nothing short of grossly negligent. I refuse to stand for this behavior when I was an officer, and I refuse to stand for it now.
Honor, permission to share my screen and show what has been marked as Exhibit 20.
That'll be fine. Go ahead.
Do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
This is my case report, and it includes some of my qualifications.
Why are you familiar with this exhibit?
I wrote this in response to being asked to be a defense attorney for this case.
Your Honor, I would like to enter this exhibit into evidence.
Is there any objection to this exhibit?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution objects to hearsay.
Any response?
Your Honor, I am just showing my witness her expert report.
But you're asking to enter it into evidence. Do you have any response to that objection from the defense? Or, excuse me, from the prosecution?
May I confer with co-counsel?
Sure, go ahead.
Your Honor, it's a former testimony.
Any further argument from the defense or the prosecution? Sorry, I'm getting the teams mixed up.
Yes, Your Honor. This is an out-of-court statement that she is trying to enter for the truth of the matter. Therefore, it is hearsay.
I think that is hearsay, so the request to admit it is denied. You can proceed.
What are your degrees?
I obtained my MA in criminal justice from Ashford University in 2014.
What is your focus as a professor?
My criminal justice MA opened doors for me, and for around 5 years now, I've taught a course at CU Denver on police practices and social justice.
You said that you were an expert witness in police practices. What do those include?
I've testified as an expert in crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police investigation tactics.
How much experience do you have with forensic evidence?
I've been accepted as an expert witness in crime scene reconstruction 8 times, and in general police investigation tactics 12 times. I've also been consulted on more than 100 criminal cases.
How much experience do you have with cell tower investigations?
I've been accepted by various courts as an expert witness in cell tower investigations around 5 times.
Your Honor, I would like to tender Blake Van Owens as an expert in crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police tactics.
Is there any objection to that designation?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution requests a brief voir dire.
Go ahead.
Now, Professor Van Owen, you don't have any certifications in cell tower analysis, do you?
I've studied them extensively, and I've been accepted as an expert witness 5 times before in cell tower data analysis.
But you still don't have any certifications in this field.
I think sometimes experience outweighs certification. I mean, I've been involved in so many cases involving cell tower analysis.
But you don't have any formal training in this field either, do you?
No.
You also don't have any formal training in crime scene reconstruction.
Again, I've been consulted on hundreds of criminal cases, and I've had so much experience with this as a private investigator, a police officer. It's my job, after all.
But you also don't have any certifications in this area, correct?
Well, I have a master's degree in criminal justice, which naturally covers crime scene reconstruction.
But you don't have any certifications in crime scene reconstruction specifically.
Not specifically. I just have a ton of experience in that department.
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution objects to Blake Van Owen being entered as an expert witness in crime scene reconstruction and cell tower analysis.
Is there any argument from the defense?
Your Honor, may I confer with co-counsel?
Yeah, of course.
Your Honor, experience outweighs a certification, and she has been issued as an expert before.
Okay. I think the witness has the necessary qualifications to testify as an expert, so you can go ahead.
As an expert, what are your thoughts on the prosecution's interpretation of events?
I agree that the physical on-scene evidence points to an intruder who broke into the home of the victim, but that's about all that we agree on. The prosecution came to an easy conclusion.
Could you expand on that?
The problem with going for the easy is that it leaves significant doubt as to who actually committed this crime. I'm talking about the level of doubt that should have caused the prosecution to go back to the drawing board instead of impaneling a jury, for heaven's sake.
Have you had any prior experiences with Detective Markowitz or Kyle Kuzak?
Unfortunately, I have.
Can you tell us about those?
I've been involved in more than one case handled by Detective Markowitz, and I have little doubt about how his relationship with Kyle Cusack has completely blindsided this case.
Do you have any experience analyzing autopsies related to knife-inflicted wounds?
I've reviewed autopsy and crime scene reports from hundreds of stabbings.
Can you tell me about the murder weapon?
You mean the murder weapon that's a completely different brand from the knives in the knife block? Which, might I add, Cusack acknowledges? Houston, we have a problem.
Why is the knife block relevant to this case?
The crime scene photos of the kitchen show that the murder weapon was not just a different brand from the knives in the knife block. It was clearly inconsistent with the style and blade dimensions of the otherwise orderly and same set of knives that were there. All that considered, it would make much more sense for the intruder to have brought the murder weapon with them to the scene of the crime, rather than finding it there.
What is your opinion on the prosecution's interpretation of events related to the stabbing?
Physical evidence clearly shows that Cusack's flight of fancy is not reasonable. The only apparent evidence of a struggle is the scuffing on the floor, which is not indicative of Cusack's quarrel for the knife scenario.
If not Cusack's proposed scenario, where could these scuff marks have come from?
You can't carbon date scuff marks to see how old they are. Those could have been made years before the incident. There aren't even any before and after pictures to say that they were made by the intruder.
What else can you tell us about the stabbing?
Cusack asserts that, based on the knife's position, the intruder was in front of Brockman and the two of them were quarreling for control of the knife, though this is obviously incorrect.
Why is that incorrect?
The autopsy report reveals that the knife was inserted into the victim's back with the sharp side of the knife pointing forward, as I've illustrated on page 2 of my case report. That's not in evidence. In order for the assailant to have stabbed Mackenzie Brackman, they would have had to have been much taller than him in order to exert the amount of force necessary at that angle to nick Brackman's aorta. But we know from the ring videos that this just isn't the case. The intruder is actually of a similar height to Mr. Brackman.
So is the prosecution's interpretation of events impossible?
Yeah, it's pretty impossible. The prosecution thinks that their proposed scenario is correct for two reasons. First, the scuff marks on the floor, which I have already proved to be flimsy evidence at best, and the Ring doorbell alert.
Can you elaborate on the Ring doorbell alert?
We don't know whether Mackenzie Brackman had the Ring set up to receive real-time notifications. That would have been an easy thing for the prosecution to figure out if they had obtained the complete records, but they failed to do so. But even if Mr. Brackman was receiving those alerts, that says nothing of if he was paying attention to them.
So in your expert opinion, how was Mackenzie Brackman really stabbed?
Under the circumstances, it makes much more sense for Mr. Brackman to have been sitting with the intruder standing behind him after breaking into the home and surprising him. Then, of course, a knife wound in the back would be consistent with the size of the intruder. Substance usually follows form.
More to the prosecution's investigation, what can you tell us about cell towers?
What can I tell you? That the state's case is as shaky as a drunk with DTs. Cell tower data is not remotely like GPS information.
Can you describe the relationship between cell phones and cell towers?
Cell phones have the ability to connect to multiple towers. A cell phone is designed to select the tower that provides the best signal. This isn't always the closest tower. In a metropolitan setting, it's not unusual for a phone to generate 5 calls, and for the phone that made those calls to link up to 5 different towers.
What does that mean?
Even if the person with Avery Becker's phone was actually in the area normally covered by that one tower, this person could easily have been far enough away to not even be able to see the victim's house from their location. And even if the phone was in the area covered by that tower, there's no indication that Becker was in possession of the phone at the time.
Can you elaborate on that?
As I'm sure you'll soon hear, Avery Becker, on the day of the murder, was accompanied by her friend, Taylor Perkins, as they were searching for her stolen phone. The same phone that the prosecution believes was in the general vicinity of the crime scene. What's worse is that the prosecution never thought to obtain the cell tower data related to Taylor Perkins' phone, despite the fact that he was with Avery the entire day of the murder.
Is there a more likely suspect involved in this case?
The problem with the easy culprit here is the motive. I uncovered someone with a much stronger motive to kill Mr. Brackman than Becker. This person is the child of one of Brackman's former clients, Blair Rollins.
You mentioned that Blair Rollins' parent was a former client of Mackenzie Brackman. Can you elaborate on that?
A few months before the murder, Mr. Brackman represented Jonathan Rollins, Blair's father, who had been charged with murder. Try as Mr. Brackman might, the evidentiary chips were stacked against him and his client. Jonathan Rollins was convicted and sentenced to life in prison.
Is it possible that Blair Rollins is more likely suspect than Avery Becker?
In my opinion, yes. I've looked at the pictures in the CHS yearbook, and Blair Rollins has the same build and body type as Avery Becker. Avery and Perkins later confirmed that he is also the same height as Avery. Even more suspiciously, Blair Rollins essentially disappeared after graduation. I haven't even been able to locate him. In fact, on the day of the murder, Rollins was marked absent from school. Surely watching your father be put away for murder is more of a motive to kill than being cut from a mock trial team, right? It's not rocket science.
All of this considered, in your professional opinion, what are your thoughts surrounding the prosecution's handling of this case?
In the end, this investigation was extremely rushed. It has all the hallmarks of, I made up my mind at the get-go, and then I found evidence which would support my conclusion. When you pick the easy culprit, you don't have to go out and sift in the hot sun and sift patiently through the evidence.
That is all, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there any cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Professor Van Ellen, you were once a police officer, correct?
That is correct.
However, you became disillusioned with police work.
I did.
And this is because of its tactics and techniques.
Well, as a police officer, there are a ton of things that you can get away with that are just morally corrupt, and I didn't want to participate in any practices or protocol that would compel me to be a part of that system. I wanted to turn over a new leaf and start a new life for myself after I realized what was really going on and the people that I was hurting.
Exactly. You became disillusioned with this work, and you quit the police force because of it.
Yes.
And you frequently testify as an expert witness, correct?
I do.
And you always testify for the defense.
That is correct.
You even consider yourself a check on the power of the police.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to talk about the cell phone records.
Okay.
You are aware that Avery Becker wasn't at school on March 6, 2020.
Yes, she was searching for her stolen phone with her friend.
And you're also aware that it is more likely for a cell phone to connect to the nearest cell phone tower, correct?
Likely, sure, but not impossible for it to connect to a tower that's miles away if that's the best signal available.
But it is more likely.
If you get down to the technicalities, I suppose, sure, but we don't always work in technicalities.
And there is a cell phone tower near Brackman's home, correct?
Correct.
This cell phone tower is tower number 1197.
Yes.
Avery Becker's phone connected to this tower 3 times on March 6th, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Once at 1:05 p.m.,
Yes.
once at 1:06 p.m.,
Yes.
and again at 1:17 p.m.
Yes.
So Avery Becker's phone connected to the cell tower nearest Brackman's home 3 times, right around the time of the murder, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Is there any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Okay, let me verify everybody's name. We have Taylor Gleim as attorney for the defense, Cyan Oakleaf as the witness, and Bella Burgess as prosecution attorney. Is all of that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I know. So you can call your next witness.
Hi, Your Honor. I would like to call Amy Becker to the stand.
All right, do we have our witness?
I'm here.
And do we have an attorney for the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you can start when you're ready.
Perfect. Can you state your name for the court and spell it out?
Avery Becker, spelled Averybecker.
Perfect. Let's talk a little bit about your academic performance. How would you describe that overall?
I was an honor student, and
Objection, relevance.
I'm trying to set a foundation for, the kind of person that she is.
Any response from the prosecution?
Your Honor, I don't see how Avery Becker's academic performance is relevant to this case at all.
I think it's acceptable. Overruled. You can proceed.
Thank you. Do you need me to restate the question?
No. So yeah, as I was saying, I was an honor student. I never had any altercations with anybody. I was on mock trial, and I was pretty good at that. And yeah, overall, I think I was a good student.
Gotcha. And your performance within mock trial, how would you describe that?
I was really good with coming up with stuff on the spot, and I was good at what I did. I won a couple of awards, and maybe practice-wise, I wasn't always participating in the practice, and but I was pretty much just good at what I did naturally.
Gotcha. And now that we've established that you're a good student, let's move on to who were you with on the day of the murder?
The day of the murder, I was with Taylor Perkins.
And who is Taylor Perkins?
He is my best friend.
Were you two at school the day of the murder, that is?
No. Taylor and we ditched school to go look for my phone, because I believe it was stolen.
Gotcha. What about the day before the murder? Who were you with?
I was with Taylor again.
And anybody else you were with the day before the murder?
Well, Taylor and I decided to go to the Fry Shack, and there was like a couple people from the mock trial team, and I had a bit of an interaction with Alex Fuentes, and that's pretty much it. Then we went to the mall after that.
Gotcha. And this intervention was the day before the murder, right?
Yeah.
And
Objection, leading question.
May I rephrase my question, Your Honor?
Yeah, that'll be fine. Go ahead.
Thank you. The day of the meeting at the Fry Shack, when was that?
It was the day before the murder, March 5th.
And when was the last time you had physical contact with your phone?
That day at the Fry Shack.
And did you see anybody touching your phone at the Fry Shack?
Alex Fuentes was on my phone at one point, but that was pretty much it besides me.
Gotcha. And who is Alex Fuentes?
She's a former student, or well, currently she's still a student, but a former classmate, and we were in mock trial together, and she was, I feel, a little jealous of me because I was good at what I did and she wanted the roles I got.
So just reestablishing she was jealous of you?
Yeah, I feel like she was.
And the friendship itself, how would you describe that just briefly?
I'd say there is no friendship there.
Gotcha, perfect. And steering away a little bit, did you vandalize Mr. Brackman's car?
I did vandalize his car.
Why is that?
Well, I had just won a couple awards, and Brackman told me I didn't deserve them, and he humiliated me in front of the team, and it hurt a lot because coming from the coach, it hurts. I love mock trial, and I'm really passionate about it, and I just wanted for once for him to be proud of me. And so.
And what did you write on the car with?
It was a permanent marker, but I thought it was an erasable marker.
Gotcha. Did you feel guilty for the act whatsoever?
I was so ashamed. The second it happened, I felt terrible. I I went home and I cried, and I told my mom that I was just upset, and I tried apologizing. I was so ashamed.
And with the amount of guilt that you felt, did you ever apologize to Mr. Brackman?
Yeah, I tried to go to his office and he wouldn't speak to me, and I texted him. I offered to get a job to pay for the damages. I did everything I could.
Gotcha. So was his reaction more positive or negative?
There was really no reaction there. He never responded, and so I never got to apologize. And I think I'll always regret that.
So in your opinion, who could have killed him, or who, may I rephrase my question? In your opinion, was there any other student that might have had some sort of bad intervention with Mr. Brackman?
Objection, speculation.
Any response?
May I speak with co-counsel?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Gotcha. May I rephrase my question?
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Thank you so much. Do you know anybody by the name Blair Rollins?
Yes, I do.
Do you know any connection between Blair Rollins and your coach?
Objection, speculation.
I'm just trying to establish some sort of relationship between another suspect that has been brought up by the prosecution team as well.
You know, she asked if the witness knew, so she either does or she doesn't. You can proceed.
Okay. So do you know Blair Rollins?
Yes.
And again, was there any kind of intervention between Blair Rollins and coach that you might have seen or heard of, or that might have been public news?
I know that Mr. Brackman lost the case of Blair's father, and his father was sentenced to life in prison. And I'm actually pretty sure that there's a saying that Blair's father said he would get back at Mr. Brackman.
Objection, hearsay.
I do remember asking her point of view or something that might have been public news, which I'm sure any other student could have testified of hearing this news as well.
Any further argument?
Your Honor, in that case, I would ask that opposing counsel lays more foundation for the discussion of this audio clip.
Lay a little bit more foundation for that question. I think that's appropriate. Go ahead.
Gotcha. So did anybody else know about this occurrence?
Yeah, it was pretty public. I'm
Gotcha.
pretty sure there's
So with that being said, you knew of this, right?
Yes.
And so did, I'm assuming, all of your fellow classmates?
Yes.
And how did you guys hear about this? Or was it just kind of out there?
Well, it was all over the news because it was a big case, and so they obviously showed a lot of what happened in the court.
Gotcha. So from what we're hearing, did you ever hear Blair say, from your point of view, did you ever hear Blair say something against Mr. Brackman?
I personally never heard him say anything, but I know that he hated Mr. Brackman probably more than anybody else in that school.
Gotcha. So you're a straight A student, correct?
Correct.
I'm correct. You have a good performance within mock trial.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you have a good social life?
Well, Taylor is my closest friend, but I would say I'm pretty well liked.
Gotcha. So with no visible motive, other than a small feud between you and your coach, I ask you, did you kill Mr. Brackman?
I did not kill Mr. Brackman. I would never want to physically harm him ever. And after that whole vandalism situation, I just have felt so guilty. I can never hurt somebody like that, let alone my mock trial teacher, coach, sorry.
Thank you, Miss Amy Becker. That would be all, Your Honor.
Is there any cross?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Ms. Becker, in your affidavit, you promised to include everything that was relevant, correct?
Correct.
And you promised to include everything that was, and you promised that everything was true and accurate, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, permission to approach the witness with what has previously been marked as her witness statement.
Go ahead.
Co-counsel, if you could screen share that for me, please. Now, Ms. Becker, can you point out to me where you say that the trial of Jonathan Rollins was a large public event?
I didn't put it in my affidavit.
But Ms. Becker, you promised to include everything that was relevant, correct?
I mean, what is
Hearsay
Any response?
is an out of court.
Your Honor, we're discussing the witness's own statement.
I think it's acceptable. That's overruled. You can proceed.
So, Ms. Becker, you promised to include everything that was relevant in your statement. So, Jonathan Rollins' trial isn't in your statement, is it?
I did mention that Brackman was the attorney on the trial.
Right, but you never talk about Jonathan Rollins or the effect that this trial had on Blair Rollins, or as you said, that this was a large public event.
I did state in my affidavit that Blair did resent Brackman for losing the case.
Objection. Right. Counsel is badgering my witness, trying to come up with whatever his end goal might be, which as well seems not relevant.
Any response?
Your Honor, I'm simply trying to establish that this witness never states in her affidavit that the trial of Jonathan Rollins was a well-known public event.
I think that's fair for cross-examination.
So once more, Ms. Becker, in your affidavit, you never say Jonathan Rollins' trial was a large public event that most people at school knew about, do you?
Correct. I never said that.
Thank you. Now, let's start by talking about where you were on March 6, 2020. You weren't at school that day, were you?
No, I wasn't.
You testified that you were with Taylor Perkins, right?
Yes.
Now, you're friends with Taylor, correct?
Correct.
Best friends, even.
Yes.
And there is no one else here today that can testify as to your whereabouts at the time of Mackenzie Brackman's death, is there?
No, nobody here.
Now, let's talk about your relationship with Coach Brackman. You were in mock trial your senior year of high school, right?
Correct.
You would say you were one of the best on the team, right?
Yes.
You relied on improvisation a lot, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
You thought Coach Brackman didn't agree with this style of mock trial, though, didn't you?
Yes, he told me.
Brackman called you lazy, didn't he?
Yes.
You thought he never gave you credit for anything, right?
Yes.
He told you to stick to his scripts, didn't he?
He did.
Coach Brackman always criticized your work, right?
Yes.
Let's talk about what happened before regionals. Coach Brackman criticized.
Relevance to the previous question?
Any response?
Your Honor, I'm simply trying to establish foundation for the relationship between Avery Becker and Coach Brackman as that goes to Becker's motive.
Any further argument?
But I don't see the relevance as to, you know what, I remove my objection. Keep going. Thank you.
Okay. All right, you can proceed.
I'll ask the question again, Ms. Becker. Before regionals, Coach Brackman criticized your lack of preparation, didn't he?
Yeah.
He took away your closing argument, right?
Well, he changed it.
And he even demoted you to the B team, didn't he?
He did.
You thought the B team was full of losers, didn't you?
I didn't think they were as good as the A team.
Objection, relevance. How does the performance or her opinion on the performance of B and A team have to do with the case?
Any
Or the-
response?
Your Honor, I'm trying to establish the effect that this event had on Ms. Becker, as it again goes to her motive.
Any further argument?
No, Your Honor.
I think those are fair questions for cross-examination, so the objection's overruled.
I'll ask the question again, Ms. Becker. You thought the B team was full of losers, didn't you?
I just thought they weren't as good as the A team.
That's not what you said, Ms. Becker. You thought the B team was full of losers, didn't you?
Sure. Yes.
So that's a yes?
Yes.
You tried everything to convince Coach Brackman to put you back on the A team, right?
Yes, I begged him to let me back on.
But Brackman refused, didn't he?
Yes.
Eventually, Brackman put you back on the A team because no one else could fill your role, right?
Well, yes, and my friend had also quit until I was let back on the A team.
Brackman still criticized you, didn't he?
Yeah.
Brackman told you in front of the entire team that you didn't deserve the Best Attorney Award, didn't he?
Yes, he humiliated me.
This made you angry, right?
I mean, yeah, I was angry and upset, and yes.
Exactly. You didn't want to keep being insulted.
Well, I mean, I love mock trials, so it didn't really matter.
But you didn't want to keep being insulted, right?
Would it? Yes, I didn't want it to be.
So at that point, you stormed out of the room, right?
Yes.
When you left the room, you had a permanent marker in your hand, right?
Yes, I thought it was a washable marker.
But it was a permanent marker, right?
Yes.
When you left the building, you wrote with the permanent marker, Worst Attorney Award on the hood of Brackman's white Porsche, right?
Correct.
Once Brackman saw that, he kicked you off the team, didn't he?
Yes.
And that made you angrier than ever, right?
It made me upset, yes.
It made you angrier than ever, right?
I'm sorry, can you restate that?
That event made you angrier than ever, right?
Yes, I was angry, but
You thought Mr. Brackman would never let you on the team again, right?
I mean, he kicked me off, so yeah.
So you went home after that, right?
Correct.
You told your mom that Brackman got on you again for no good reason, didn't you?
Yeah, I did not specify that I vandalized the car.
But you did tell her you walked out of practice, didn't you?
Yes.
And as you said, you didn't tell her what you had done to Brackman's car, right?
Correct.
You told her that you would get back at Brackman if it was the last thing you did, didn't you?
Correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Is there any redirect for this witness?
Your Honor, it seems like we lost connection with our attorney.
That's what it looks like. Pause the clocks. Are you able to make contact outside of Zoom with her?
Yes, we will try to get in contact with her.
Okay.
Your Honor, sorry to interrupt, I'm the coach for Team 7.
Okay.
And I just received a call from Emma. Her computer died, and so
Oh, no.
Yes, never, surprise, surprise. So she is right now engaging a new computer in another part of the house.
Okay. Did she say how long that's going to take?
She was in the middle of it when she called.
Okay.
Guessing.
All right, we'll wait for another couple of minutes.
Thank you.
Me getting onto the other computer right now. So she'll be on in like a few.
Okay, great. She is in the waiting room. I'm letting her in right now.
I'm so incredibly sorry, Your Honor. My computer just completely shut off. May we continue?
No apologies are necessary at all. It's a classic example of what can go wrong, will go wrong. Are you ready to do a redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
If you need a minute to gather your notes, go ahead.
I will take that minute. Thank you so much.
Okay, all right, that'll be fine.
May I go, Your Honor?
Let's get the time started again, and yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. So I want to go back to how your relationship might have actually been with Mr. Brackman. So it hurt you when he would talk bad about you and badger you for not doing what he wanted you to do during mock trial, correct?
Correct.
And would you describe the feeling as more angry or sad?
It was both. I will admit I was angry, but I was also sad. I don't think Brackman was a bad coach because he wasn't, but I still felt like, I don't know, I was just really upset by his comments.
Gotcha. And were there any instances where you cried after an argument?
Yeah, I
Objection.
did cry.
Outside the scope of cross.
Any response?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Outside the scope of cross.
May I discard that question, Your Honor?
Yeah, if you want to move on, go ahead.
Gotcha. So when you came back onto the A team, were you satisfied there? Did you have any tendencies for revenge for Mr. Brackman?
Ms. Buckley, I think you might be on mute.
I apologize. My computer disconnected from the Wi-Fi for some reason.
Don't worry about it. Why don't you repeat the question?
Gotcha. So when you were kicked onto the B team and brought back onto the A team, were you satisfied there?
Yeah, I enjoy being on the A team. I like the people. I like mock trial.
So that was good enough for you, right? You were,
Yeah,
you were good. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And that would be it, Your Honor.
All right. Let me make sure I've got all of your names correct. We've got Emma Espino as the attorney for the defense,
Yes,
Juliet
Your Honor.
Buckley as the witness, and Henry Falconetti as the prosecution attorney. I see everybody nodding heads. So thank you, and the defense can call the third witness.
I would like to bring Taylor Perkins to stand.
Okay, do we have our witness?
Your Honor, may I ask the timekeepers how much time do I have left?
Sure, I think they should be able to put that in the chat.
Okay.
All right, do we have our witness?
Yes.
And do we have our prosecution attorney as well? Do we have an attorney for the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor. Can you
There we go. Yes, we got you. Okay, go ahead.
State your name and spell it for the.
My name is Taylor Perkins, TaylorPerkins, INS.
What's your relationship with Avery Becker?
Me and Avery are best friends.
What do you mean by that?
Me and Avery were classmates throughout high school. We did everything together. We went to go out to eat a lot, and we went to the mall. So we were just like really close.
Were you and Avery? Where were you and Avery Becker on the day of Coach Brackman's death?
On that day, Avery had previously told me that he lost his phone on the previous day. So we spent March 6th, 2020 looking for his phone.
Can you briefly explain what you did that day?
Yeah, so I was waiting outside of my house because we normally carpool, and we we normally carpool, and I was calling him to see if he was gonna still pick me up, and he wasn't answering his phone. So when he arrived at my house, we looked for, or he told me that his phone had been missing, so we went to the mall, and then we retraced our steps to the Fry Shack. So
What happened to Mr. Brackman's car in your knowledge?
Avery texted me that he accidentally wrote on Mr. Brackman's Porsche with a marker, and he thought that it was dry erase, but he felt so bad.
How is this different from violence against Mr. Brackman himself?
Avery can be rash and he can be excessive sometimes, but he didn't even mean to write on the Porsche, and Avery's not the type of person to murder someone. Avery's a good guy, and I think that he felt lots of remorse for the car already.
How did Miss Becker feel about her phone?
Miss Becker was kind of attached to her phone, and it was kind of a surprise that she had lost it. But I mean, it was kind of overwhelming for her, everything that had already happened, you know?
But then how did she go a whole day without noticing it was gone?
Well, Miss Becker has lots of homework to do after school, and her mom doesn't let her use it. So that, and then obviously her getting kicked off the mock trial team, it was just lots of stuff that she had to deal with.
So let's talk about Alex Cifuentes. Were Alex and Avery friends?
No, Avery and Alex were kind of rivals. Alex was very jealous of Avery.
Is Avery capable of trashing Mr. Brackman's house?
Of course not. Avery, like I said before, Avery can be rash, but he would never go as far as going to Brackman's house to trash it. He already had tried to apologize for the Porsche. I don't see why he would go even further.
Do you think Alex Cifuentes stole Mrs. Becker's phone?
I definitely think it's a possibility. I think he would do anything to be star of the mock trial team, even frame Avery for burglary.
Objection, speculation.
Your Honor, this witness is best friends with Avery, and probably knows Alex because of Avery, so I think he is valid to make these observations.
Any further argument?
Friends with Avery Becker, you don't know Alex's state of mind, motive, ideas, because you are not Alex.
I think he can give his personal opinions based on his observations. So overruled. You can proceed.
Let's see. Where were you? Where were you when the cell phone towers detected Avery's phone near Mr. Brackman's house?
As far as I know from talking to the private investigator, when I was calling him, his cell phone was receiving my calls because I was still trying to see if we were carpooling. So,
what's the relationship between Coach Brackman and Avery?
Honestly, Coach Brackman and Avery were kind of at each other's throats. Brackman didn't really like Avery because he thought he was really lazy, and he just wasn't very that good of a coach towards Avery.
Why did you quit the mock trial team?
Well, the whole reason I joined was to get closer to Avery and to spend more time with him. I mean, he was my best friend, and seeing that he got demoted to B team, it just didn't seem fun anymore, and I didn't see the point.
Were you with Avery the whole day?
Yes, I was. And which day are you referring to? Because I was with him the day before and the day of.
Were you with Avery the whole day of during Mr. Brackman's murder?
Yes. On March 6th, like I said, we were looking for his phone and we went to the mall, then we went to the Fry Shack, and then we had seen Alex Fuentes and the other mock trial kids.
Did you see Avery Becker break into Mr. Brackman's house?
No, of course not. He was with me the whole time. I don't see how that's possible.
So you did not see Avery Becker kill Mr. Brackman?
No, he was with me the whole time on the day of the murder.
That is all, Your Honor.
Is there any cross?
Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Perkins. I'd just like to ask you a few questions. First, you were best friends with Avery Becker,
That is correct.
and you two were on the mock trial team together.
That is also correct.
And it's true that you wouldn't have done mock trial had Ms. Becker not had done it.
That is also correct.
Objection, what's the relevance of these questions?
Any response?
Yes, Your Honor. I'm asking these questions to show the credibility of Taylor Perkins as a witness for Avery Becker's trial.
Any further argument? I think those questions are acceptable. Overruled. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, you believe that you and the defendant made a good team,
That is also a correct statement.
and you believe that Miss Becker was very good at mock trial.
I do believe that Miss Becker was indeed quite good at mock trial.
You also believe that Miss Becker could be unprepared,
That is also true.
but even unprepared, you claim that she would perform flawlessly.
Your objection asked and answered. This counselor has already asked my witness this question.
Any response?
Yes, Your Honor. I did not ask this question before, just simply clarifying that Taylor Perkins believes that Avery Becker would perform flawlessly at mock trial, even unprepared.
Any further argument? I couldn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
Oh, Your Honor.
I think it's acceptable. Overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, even though you think Miss Becker would perform flawlessly, you said she had an inflated ego and was rash.
That is also true, but I don't think that she would ever intentionally do things.
Now, Mr. Perkins, you're getting a little ahead of me here. I'm just clarifying that you said that Miss Becker was rash.
That is a true statement.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. I'd now like to move on to talk about the defendant's relationship with Mr. Brackman. Mr. Brackman and the defendant were often at odds with each other, correct?
That is correct.
And Mr. Brackman publicly humiliated Miss Becker.
Yes, kicking Avery off the mock trial team.
Like you said, Mr. Brackman kicked Miss Becker off the mock trial team.
Yep.
I'm badgering the witness. Counselor is badgering my witness.
I think it's acceptable. You overruled. You can go ahead.
And being kicked off the mock trial team made the defendant upset.
That is correct.
And often, Mr. Brackman got upset with the defendant.
That is also correct.
And after Miss Becker was demoted to the B team, you quit mock trial suddenly.
That is correct.
Objection, what's the relevance of that question?
Any response?
I'm asking these questions to show the credibility of Taylor Perkins as a witness.
Any further argument? I think the questions are acceptable. Overruled.
Thank you. I'm going to restate the question, if that's all right,
Sure.
Mr. Perkins. You left the mock trial team after the defendant was demoted to B team.
That is correct.
And you would say that her demotion was a big part of the reason why you left.
That is also correct. I didn't see the point.
and you stepped down to support your friend.
That is correct.
Now, you are the only alibi for the defendant on the day of the murder.
That is correct.
And when you went to the Fry Shack together and the mall looking for the phone, no one else could verify that it was you two together?
Um, I mean, I don't know anyone. It was just us looking for the phone. I mean, we had ditched school to go look for it, so everyone was already at school.
Now, on March 5th, you and the defendant went to the Fry Shack together.
That is correct.
And the defendant had her phone with her.
That is also correct.
But you cannot remember if Miss Becker had her phone when she left.
That is also correct.
You claim that you and the defendant spent all day March 6th looking for the missing phone.
That is correct.
But you only attempted to track the phone by calling and texting it.
That is also correct. I only had an Android phone. I have an Android phone, so Find My iPhone wasn't a possibility.
Mr. Perkins, you are aware that Find My iPhone does work with an Android phone.
Not at the time. I wasn't aware.
But you are aware currently.
Yeah.
And the defendant was, you say that the defendant was with you the whole day.
That is also correct.
But no one
Objection
here in
asked,
court
answered.
can verify.
Objection asked, answer. Counselor has already asked my witness this question multiple times.
Any response?
Your Honor, I was just clarifying for the sake of the cross-examination.
Any further argument?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. It seemed like a clarifying question to me, so overruled. You can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Mr. Perkins, at no point on March 6th did you and the defendant track the phone?
No, because I was not aware.
I'm sorry, Mr. Perkins, you cut out there. Could you please restate your answer?
Can't hear anyone.
Mr. Steele, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, I think we got you back. Could you start your answer over again?
I didn't hear the question. Could you repeat it, Counselor?
Yes. At no point on March 6th did you and the defendant attempt to track the missing phone?
No, Counselor. Like I said, I was not aware at the time that I could do that from my Android phone.
Thank you. No further questions.
Is there any redirect?
Yes. How much time do I have left?
Your Honor, according to my calculations, the defense has exactly 5 seconds left.
5 seconds? Okay. Were you with Miss Becker at the day of the murder? Did you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm not sure that Mr. Steele can. Mr. Steele, are you able to hear me? I think, well.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
All right, start that 5 seconds over again.
Were you with Miss Becker at the day of the murder?
Yes, I was all day.
That's all, Your Honor.
All right, I believe that's all of the witnesses for the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. That's
All right, let me make sure I have all of your names. The defense attorney for this witness was Zifan Wang. Mr. James Steele was the witness, and Audra Snyder was the prosecution attorney.
Yep.
All right, great. Thank you all. And is the prosecution prepared to give closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor, if I can have just a moment to set up.
Sure.
Thank you. Can you see and hear me all right?
Yes.
Before we begin, can I request that any remaining time be reserved for rebuttal?
That will be fine.
Thank you, Your Honor. The right place at the right time. Avery Becker was in the right place at the right time. Today, prosecution has met the burden of proof. We have showed you that Avery Becker was at the scene of the murder at the time of the crime. Mackenzie Brackman was very set in his ways, a hardened and perhaps somewhat jaded veteran of the public trial. In accordance with this, he applied his philosophy of preparedness and sticking to the script to his mock trial team at Colorado High School. This served him well enough until he crossed paths with Avery Becker. You heard from Alex Cifuentes and Taylor Perkins today that Avery Becker was essentially an anti-Brackman to the mock trial team. She showed up late. She didn't prepare. She left her team in a constant state of anxiety. Avery felt that Brackman's methods were restrictive and overbearing. Brackman felt that Avery's methods were chaotic and risky. As you can imagine, this was a constant source of friction between the two. Shouting matches from the entire team, threats, angry glares, frustration, all building up more and more until something snapped. During what should have been a normal practice, Coach Brackman told Avery that she didn't deserve the Best Attorney Award. Avery, in a rage, stormed out of the room. A few minutes later, Brackman left the building to find the hood of his white Porsche proclaiming, "Worst Attorney Award." Who's standing there but Avery Becker, fingers curled around a permanent marker? Coach Brackman kicked Avery off the team. This left Avery devastated and with nothing to do but stew. I'd like to talk about the day of Mackenzie Brackman's death, March 6, 2020. This is the point where the defense has tried to call the story into question. Detective Jordan Markowitz's investigation concluded that the evidence clearly shows Avery Becker was at the scene of the crime. You saw Avery's text to Alex Cifuentes proclaiming he's going to be really upset when he sees what I do to his house. That's not damning enough. The cell tower records clearly show that Avery Becker traveled from her house to Brackman's that day. Members of the jury, what else is there possibly to conclude? Now, Professor Blake Van Owen may contend that none of this proves anything. Despite the mountain of evidence produced by Detective Markowitz, he's still grasping at straws, stretching the truth to any degree to try to stake it to the man. Members of the jury, Blake Van Owen is not Batman. Will you trust the police with their advanced tools, qualified experts, and surplus of resources? Or will you trust a disgruntled professor who will do anything to prove any police investigation wrong, even with the thinnest of evidence, even with the shakiest theories, even if it means that justice is not served? Let me remind you that prosecution has proved Avery Becker was in the right place at the right time. The evidence is clearly against the idea that some vaguely suspicious student discovered through yearbooks and Google has anything to do with this case. The evidence is clearly in favor of the idea that Avery Becker was at the victim's house at the time of the victim's death. Members of the jury, after that, the logic is simple. Prosecution has met its burden. Find Avery Becker guilty. Thank you.
There we go. All right. Is the defense prepared to give a closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you can start when you're ready.
Ladies and gentlemen, cold counsel, Your Honor. Today we heard an elaborate story about two experts who failed to do their jobs and gave an inadequate collection and presentation of evidence against Avery Becker, whose biggest failing was vandalizing the car of a teacher whom she felt attacked her, an action that she repeatedly apologized for, certainly not the behavior of a murderer. The prosecution presented 3 witnesses. a high school rival of Avery Becker who had no knowledge of the crime. She wasn't there. She wasn't a friend of Avery's. He simply saw his coach criticize and Avery walk away mad. Both police experts with all the technological tools that the government used for that and their years of experts skipped several vital steps in their investigation. We brought you Avery Becker, an honor student and an award-winning mock trial competitor who testified she felt terrible. She went home and cried after she realized that the markers she used to deface her coach's car was permanent instead of a temporary outburst towards her coach. She testified that she was with her friend Taylor Perkins all day during the day of the murder. Let's talk about Taylor Perkins. Mr. Perkins not only testified to her character of his best friend, he testified that he was with her all day. Indeed, he presented an alibi. Perhaps you are skeptical about the testimony of teenagers. So consider the testimony of a crime scene reconstruction and police investigative tactics expert, Blake Van Owen. Owen concluded that the police failed to use the cell phone tower investigation tools that they had and instead relied on screenshots, which are easily manipulated. Police identified as the murder weapon a knife that didn't match the location where the prosecution said it came from, and it was a weapon that could not possibly have been used successfully by someone Avery Becker's size. And critically, the police ignored the obvious connections between Blair Rollins and the murder victim. Rollins, as you learn, has a significant motive to kill Coach Brackman, the man who sent his father to prison. There was a crime, and may Mr. Brackman rest in peace. But the matter of the fact that with the poor police work done today, nobody can prove that. Avery Becker, a straight-A student with no real motive, is capable of murder. Let's remember this is about a teenager's life. Avery Becker simply couldn't have killed Coach Brackman. For you to conclude that Avery Becker must suffer and pay the price of a crime that she did not commit, I remind you that you must decide beyond a shadow of a doubt that she is guilty. The poor police work that has cast a shadow. So we asked the jury to find Avery Becker not guilty of the murder in first degree and second degree burglary of a dwelling. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Falconetti, I believe you reserved some time for rebuttal. And so if you'd like to give a rebuttal, go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. Members of the jury, the defense just stood up in front of you and told you that there was inadequate evidence to prove that Avery Becker committed this crime. But let me remind you again that Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak are in total agreement. Detective Markowitz found that Avery Becker traveled from her house to Brackman's that day. Kyle Kuzak found that Avery Becker was likely at the scene of the crime. Now, Avery Becker has tried to victimize herself several times throughout this case. But let me remind you, you are supposed to be impartial. You can't let emotions get in the way of your decision. You have to use logic. You have to choose between Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak or Professor Blake Van Owen, a disgruntled conspiracy theory.
Mr. Falconetti, I believe that's all of your time.
No.
Okay, we have reached the conclusion of round 3. So let me ask our scoring panelists